Those chickens don't have to go outside a single day in their life, and they can still sell every single egg as pasture raised simply because they have that amount of square footage outside of the barn. You know, whenever I asked in an early meeting, what's the industry standard for how many birds go outside? They said less than 15% of birds will ever go outside a single day in their life, let alone actually be truly raised out on pasture. These companies are well aware of what they're doing, and they're well aware that they're actively deceiving their customers because they know that customers associate things like a dark yolk with chickens that were raised outdoors. And so all these companies artificially darken their yolks by putting either xanthophyll, which is just a chemical, or paprika or marigold inside the feed, which can darken the yolks of all of their chickens. I'm not 100% opposed to barn models. I understand that at the end of the day, we have to provide cheap, affordable food to folks. My big thing is that you shouldn't be labeling it as something that it's not.
Give me the full story, Patrick.
Sure, yeah.
So all I know is that you were at one point in the military and that now you run a chicken operation in the Midwest, well, Mid-South, Kentucky.
Yeah.
What is that story? How did you end up where you
Sure.
are?
Yeah, so I actually grew up in Indiana, and my dad did a little bit of farming when I was young, and then, but I really had no farming experience whatsoever. And so really coming into this with like a blank slate almost. Went to West Point for college, graduated commissioned as an infantry officer, was an infantry officer, and then was selected to serve as a Green Beret in Special Forces. So did that for the latter half of my career. And then kind of was ready to get out of the military. And my wife and I, during COVID, my wife and I kind of started looking into like homesteading. I think, almost everybody did at the time. So, so we started looking into homesteading and just started watching, the sort of point of reference that we just started from was like Joel Salatin, Greg Judy, Alexander Family Farms, like watching some of those folks' videos. And so to us, that was just kind of like the starting point for how to get into homesteading or just kind of having your own small farm. And so getting on our way out of the military, we bought a small farm here in Kentucky that we're now on. And we just started doing some like small homesteading stuff. So we had some cattle out back. We started doing some pasture raised poultry for meat, some pasture raised chickens, that kind of thing. So just really small scale, trying to replicate what Joel Salatin and those kind of guys were talking about. And then I went and worked, right when I got out of the military, I went and worked for one of the big pasture raised egg companies. And so that was really my first introduction to like commercial agriculture. And so, I went into it thinking pasture raised meant, what Joel Salatin's doing, where he's rotating birds around pasture, what Alexander Family Farms and all those guys are doing. And so went into it thinking that, and then, early on in the job, went to one of the first farms to kind of see what they look like and stuff like that. And there's this gigantic commercial poultry barn, and my first thought was like, where's all the chickens? We're pasture raised, where's all the chickens outdoors? And they're like, well, they're inside the barn. I'm like, oh, okay. So it's kind of just like this huge facade,
And how can they classify it as pasture raised?
Yeah, so both free range and pasture raised, the way it works is that you just have to have a certain amount of square footage allocated outside of the barn. That if the chickens wanted to go outside, they would have a certain amount of square feet outside the barn. So for pasture raised, it's 108 square feet per hen, and for free range, depending on the certification, it's either 21.8 square feet per bird or 2 square feet per bird. And so just to give you sort of like a scale reference, on a free range farm, you could have 100,000 birds on the same amount of square footage that we at Sunnyside would put 1,000 birds on. Just to kind of give you the difference between what we call regenerative and what they call free range. Pasture raised is sort of somewhere in the middle, and so you can even see the big commercial barns, all the big commercial pasture raised egg companies. Right now they're putting in primarily 10,000 or 20,000 bird barns. 20,000 is by far their most preferred. You can even see this on their websites because they recruit specifically for farms who have 52 acres of farmland. That's for a 20,000 bird barn. That's what
they have to have 52 acres for 10,000 birds.
For 20,000 birds.
20,000.
20,000 birds. But those chickens don't have to go outside a single day in their life, and they can still sell every single egg as pasture raised simply because they have that amount of square footage outside of the barn.
So they technically even have a door open?
Well, it depends. So most of the farms have what they call like pop holes, which are like a small little door on the side that if the chickens wanted to come in and out, they could. Obviously, you're not going to get 20,000 birds in and out of those small doors on the side of the barn. But what a company can do is they can say, okay, well, let's not let them out until noon. We're not going to let our birds out until
Mhm.
noon because we want to say, well, we want to make sure we get all the eggs, right? So the bird doors might not even be opened up till noon. Or let's say there's a quote unquote threat for AI, which 365 days a year there's a threat for AI. But let's say there's a heightened threat for AI. Well, now
AI would be not artificial
no, yeah,
intelligence,
for
but
avian influenza.
yes.
Sorry, yeah, yeah. There's always a threat for
I was
artificial
like, it's
intelligence
definitely
too. Yeah,
bird flu. He's
yeah,
definitely going to be talking about bird
yeah,
flu. But
yeah,
I was like, just to
yeah,
clarify
for
in this
sure.
age.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But let's say there's a heightened threat, is what they're going to claim. Well, then for quote unquote biosecurity reasons, they can just shut the doors, and
Mm.
still those chickens don't have to go outside a single day, and they can sell every single egg as pasture raised. And so there's been times when I've walked, I've gone to 40,000 bird barns because what they do now is they put two twin 20,000 bird barns and then they have an egg collection room in the middle. So you can
Mhm.
actually put 40,000 birds in a quote unquote pasture raised system. Um, I've seen them open up the doors on those barns and not a single chicken will go outside.
Mhm.
Bright, beautiful day, chickens don't go outside. Well, why not?
Because they've
Because
never gone outside in their whole life.
one, because they've never gone outside a day in their life, which you can train a chicken. Chickens are creatures of habits. And so if you put a chicken on a farm and you don't let it out until, you don't even open the doors for the first 6 weeks that it's there, you're training the chicken to stay inside. Number two, they're starting to climate control the barns. And so, if a chicken's most preferred temperature is 72 degrees or something like that, they can climate control the barns to further incentivize the chickens to stay indoors, right? So if you train a chicken to stay indoors, you don't even open up the doors till midday, and then you climate control the barns to try to increase the probability that they stay
Mhm.
inside the farm. Well, then you're actively incentivizing your birds to not go outdoors, and
Mhm.
yet at that same time you're able to label every single one of your eggs as pasture raised, even though that chicken. Whenever I asked in an early meeting, what's the industry standard for how many birds go outside? They said less than 15% of birds will ever go outside a single day in their life, let alone actually be truly raised out on pasture, right?
Mhm.
And so, despite all of that, they can sell every single egg as pasture raised.
So, like, probably most of the bigger pasture raised eggs in grocery stores are probably raised that way.
That's correct. That's
It's at
they're
scale.
100%. Yes,
Yeah.
100% they're raised that way. If it's a major pasture raised or free range brand inside the grocery store right now, that is exactly how they're doing it. What bothers me even more is that because this is probably where I differ a little bit from some of the other folks in the regenerative space, is that I'm not 100% opposed to barn models. I understand that at the end of the day we have to provide cheap, affordable food to folks.
Mhm.
My big thing is that you shouldn't be labeling it
Yeah.
as something that it's not. And so one
You
of the other
don't like
things,
the buzzword marketing stuff.
exactly, yes,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly. And the other piece of this too is you can tell that these companies are well aware of what they're doing and they're well aware that they're actively deceiving their customers because they know that customers associate things like a dark yolk with chickens that were raised outdoors. And so all these companies artificially darken their yolks by putting either xanthophyll, which is just a chemical, or paprika or marigold inside the feed, which can darken the yolks of all of their chickens. And so what you would see from our flocks is you would see this sort of natural change of the yolk color over the seasons, right? Because
Mhm.
in the summer they might get certain proteins that darken the yolk, but then in the winter they're not eating as much bugs and sort of things that would darken the yolk, and
Yeah.
so the color is going to get a little bit lighter. But whenever you have this almost neon orange yolk time after time after time after time, that's a clear indicator that they're putting some sort of chemical or ingredient in the feed. And so that's there's a very um, deliberate act, I guess,
Yeah.
to try to deceive customers. And so, you can see it even on social media. People are starting to call these companies out online, but largely, most people are still unaware of some of these practices that are,
Interesting.
yeah, quite deceptive. So,
So you saw all of that, and that didn't sit well with you.
yeah, and again, I don't necessarily have a personal gripe with the barn model. I obviously because of our practices, I don't think it's the ideal, but I'm a
But
fairly
you
practical
probably
guy.
know, hey, I don't know if we could feed all of America's egg needs
Correct.
with
Yes,
this
that's
method.
exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And so, yeah, but I did see all of that, and I thought, well, one, there's a market for eggs from hens that were truly raised on pasture, so something very transparent about the operation. And then two, this sort of regenerative term is kind of starting to become a lot more
Yeah.
popular, right? Um, and so I thought there was a market for sort of that niche inside of the market, and we were already doing that on a small scale, just on our own family farm here. And so that's what we decided was we were going to try to do it just to sort of supplement our other income from one of our other businesses. So we started with 300 hens just here on our back pasture. We started that in December of last year. January of this year, the egg market went nuts because of AI, and so people started calling us like crazy.
Hmm.
So we started recruiting other farmers to partner with us, and so we went from 300 birds in production to about 6,000 birds in production within maybe 6, 7 months. And then, yeah, we're starting to get a little bit of like momentum and brand recognition now among some major retailers, and so the goal is by the end of next year to have somewhere between 40 and 60,000 birds in production across a
That's
whole
all
bunch of
happened in
farms.
like 12 months.
So from 12 within less than 12 months, actually, we went from 0 eggs in production to we're in 3 major retailers, a total of over 40 retail locations, about 15 food service locations, yeah, I think I just did the math. In our first 12 months, in our first month of sale, we did I think it was 360 dozen eggs. Our first, like just us, our first month.
Hmm.
Total in the first 12 months, we did over 86,000 dozen in sales. So, yeah, it has scaled,
Stressful.
yeah, super fast. And all of that, it would be one thing if all we were growing was just the production base. Like, we just were finding the chickens, putting them on, and starting to produce eggs. But within that, we also control all of our own delivery. We have our own delivery van. We have our own egg wash pack facility, which we have gotten. It's now USDA inspected. It's third-party food safety audited. We have all the same food safety insurance as the Vital Farms, the Pete and Jerry's, all those giant companies. We have all of that same thing just on a very small scale right now. And so yeah, we had to grow each piece of that kind of as we started growing. Because initially, 12 months ago today, my wife and I were still washing eggs in our kitchen sink right there. And so yeah, within 12 months, it's grown fairly exponentially, and we're anticipating even more exponential growth next year. So,
That's crazy.
yeah.
So all that happens, kind of COVID was when you kind of started thinking about homesteading. What was the moment where you were like, this is where we want to keep going?
Yeah.
Versus like, hey, we can have our homestead, we can keep
Mm-hmm.
working normal jobs and just have control of a little bit more of
Yeah.
our own food. Like, what was no,
question.
this should be my job now?
Yeah, good question. I think whenever we started to get a little bit of momentum, like going into retailers, that was kind of when we were like, all right, maybe this could be like our kind of main focus. But even still, I wouldn't say that it was until maybe like this summer that we were like, all right, we're gonna we're gonna go all in, everything we got on this, like dump some of the life savings to build a egg wash pack facility and that kind of thing. So, yeah, so it probably took us a few months at least. And yeah, this fall I would say has been good for us. We kind of were able to normalize operations a little bit over the summer and kind of just like start a consistent pattern, which gave us some time to kind of start this fall, starting to put together like the foundation for like very serious growth next year. And so yeah, I think we've got a lot of moving parts right now, but that's yeah.
So is your wife also full time with you, kind of helping out?
She full time. Really, I mean, she's a stay at home mom. Homeschools the kids, and then, but yeah, everything we do.
Which means you're definitely still working and still.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, very much so. Yeah. I say all the time, every major decision is like, we talk about and sit down and. Because we do have one what we call free range farm, which is just like a guy with a small barn, and we brought that on whenever the egg demand was just like insane. We brought that on just to be able to help out with some of the demand to fill some of that, and even then we were still looking to recruit farmers for both product lines, like a free range product line, what everybody else kind of does, and then this sort of regenerative thing. And one of the big decisions I think that we made was we were like, all right, do we want to pursue the sort of regenerative thing as like a side gig to what everyone else is doing, or do we want to make that our main, like what separates us from everyone else? And I think that was actually probably one of the most important decisions that we made was like, okay, we're going to go all in on this sort of like mobile regenerative thing. And that's not easy because there's there's no commercial scale of that right now. It doesn't exist. The biggest operation I think in the country for like mobile pasture raised eggs would be Alexander Family Farms out in California. And I want to say they've got maybe like 40,000 birds, all in mobile coops. But even still, their model isn't the same as us because they're not gearing up for nationwide distribution. You know, they're not trying to put in 500,000 birds raised this way in the long run. And and so there's just not like the infrastructure necessary to do all this. And so alongside the sort of decision to focus on regenerative mobile pasture raised eggs is like a decision, a sort of like somewhat conscious decision to be like, okay, we also have to innovate in the space in a lot of ways. Yeah. So the housing structures, how do you keep water thawed in the winter? How do you transport it? How do you keep your farm small but still match the logistics efficiencies of the big guys? Like all of those challenges still require a lot of innovation, and so
because you're not going to go and put up a 20,000 acre barn.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
To do that because that's not how the logistics work.
Yep.
There's nothing at that scale yet where guys are like, yeah, I'm going to put up a 10,000 barn or 10,000 hen barn just for regenerative.
Exactly. Yep.
The logistics either hasn't been invented yet or it won't be able to be done. I mean,
yeah.
There's probably a lot you guys are thinking like, okay, like 10 years down the road, we're thinking, how are we going to supply this? And there's a lot of stuff you got to figure out.
Exactly. And so, just for, I guess, reference, the reason that the big companies use 20,000 birds is because 20,000 birds is one semi-truckload every 2 weeks. And so rather than having to go to, a handful of different farms, they can just go to one farm. It's one stop.
Logistically,
it's a lot easier and it keeps the cost down. And so what we've decided to do to match that is that we now place 20,000 birds per community. And so we recruit generally by Amish or Mennonite community, and what we'll do is we'll go and recruit 5 or 6 farms maybe within one community that are all down the same road, because they're a pretty small close-knit community, and so we can come close to matching that logistical efficiency, not quite as well, but we can still place 20,000 birds in the same geographic area just without on one single farm.
And the reason you choose those communities is because typically, at least from what I've seen, like in the regenerative or the cover cropping space, Amish and Mennonites already have been farming that way pretty consistently.
Yeah.
Not that it's a new practice for them, but that's just kind of how it's always been done for them.
And it's actually a really great match because, like you said, a lot of these communities, there's already people who are doing these practices, but they don't have the technology, they don't have the salesmanship. It's not in their culture. It's not their culture to like be a salesman.
They're not going to build a nationwide brand.
Exactly.
Because that's not how they think.
Exactly. But almost, all of our farmers basically come to me with the same problem where they're like, we're interested in getting into agriculture. I've got a wife and 5 kids at home who kind of need some work around the farm to do. I've got 15 acres and right now we've got 2 horses on it. They're like, the land isn't being used. But we want to use the land. We want our family to have this extra source of income, but we don't have any way to market it. We don't have any way to take it to market other than, friends and neighbors. And so it's a perfect match for us because we like our farms to be smaller scale. We don't want to put 20,000 birds and $2.5 million of investment into the farm. We want 3,000 birds and $100,000 in investment, and so that's a much more digestible investment and relationship for a lot of Amish communities than 20,000 birds, $2.5 million chicken barn, giant
it's hard to go to a row crop operation and be like, hey, how you have several thousand acres. You spend millions of dollars investing in turning a bunch of this into regeneratively raised eggs.
Exactly. And so that's really been our supplier base, and we have a huge demand from it as well. Like I put in. One of the things that always cracks me up about these big companies is that they're always like going on social media and saying that they're looking for farmers, right?
Yep.
But most of their grower base is also Amish and Mennonite. And so like what we did was there's like an Amish newspaper here in Kentucky. So we just submitted a 1-month ad for that we were looking for growers. And I think we got over like 150 phone calls from people looking to like partner with us.
People who are putting the ads on social media don't realize
that's exactly right.
That's exactly doesn't really care about social media.
Exactly. Yeah. And so like we had an overwhelming response. Like it got to the point where I had to call the guy and pause it because it was like I was just on the phone all day, every day with Amish people, like calling in, trying to partner with us. And so that's how we, just kind of going back to the main point, that's how we match some of the logistical efficiency of the big guys, is that we just place by the community rather than by the farm. And so we'll still put in 20,000 birds at a time. We'll just do it over 6 farms instead of 1 farm.
So talk a little. We were talking before we started recording about the labor that goes into it, that also being more suited to an Amish community. Talk a little bit about what is the labor that it takes to raise these hens for you guys.
Yeah, obviously. So starting with a barn model, generally speaking, a barn model is going to be a lot less labor day to day and a lot more labor all at once whenever you're either putting the birds in or taking the birds out. Because let's say you've got
Hmm.
20,000 birds that you have to get out of your barn. You've also got 20,000 birds and a year and a half worth of manure piled up underneath those birds that
Hmm.
you're going to have to scrape out of there and go find and do something with, right? So, um, yeah, and so, but day to day, most of the time, all your quote unquote day to day operations, if you have a barn model, is like you press a little button and the eggs roll out to
Yep.
you. And if you don't have an egg packer, then maybe you have to pack them by hand. But if you do have an egg packer, then all you have to do is stack them on a pallet and that's it.
Hmm.
And so, it might take you 30, 40 minutes for 20,000 birds worth of eggs. Alternatively, our system is obviously a little bit more labor intensive because one, you have to physically go out to wherever your chicken house is, which could be, it could be up close to the house, or it could be on the backside of your pasture that day
Yeah.
because that's where you've rotated it around to. And so you go out to your chicken house, depending on your feed system. Like for us, we have a hopper that we can hold 1 week's worth of feed in. And so it was a little, we'd only take it out once a week.
Hmm.
But if you don't have that system, if you're hand feeding, then maybe you have a gravity wagon. Maybe you're hauling feed out by in bags every single day to put it in the feed. You're
Mm.
collecting eggs, checking on your flock, maybe putting some water in there through most of our farmers would have like a hose running from a spigot, and then collecting your eggs and then hauling those eggs back to a cooler, putting them in the cooler, and then labeling them. All of that is obviously a little bit more labor intensive than just walking out to the barn
It's a
pressing a
chore
button.
every single day
Exactly.
that
That's
you're going to
exactly right.
have to do
That's
for
exactly right.
sure. Yeah.
Yep. But the flip side to that is that to put in a 20,000 bird poultry barn right now, land and barn is going to cost you about $2.5 million here in Kentucky. Our upfront cost is generally around $100,000 for 3,000 birds. At $100,000 and 3,000 birds, most farmers can cash flow the same with us that they can with one of the big guys on 20,000 birds. And so for Amish and
Cash
Mennonite
flow as a
communities,
whole or cash flow per bird?
cash flow as a whole, yeah.
So like
So
they're
month
making
on
more
month.
off of way
Hmm.
less
That's
birds,
correct. Yes,
technically.
correct. Yeah, that's right. And so if you're a farmer and you're looking at this and you're like, well, I'm personally okay with more labor and upfront capital cost, then it's kind of a match made in heaven. Because yeah, for most guys, what we found is that most farmers don't actually want to take out
Mm.
$2.5 million loan.
Does anybody want to take out a two and a
Oh,
half million dollar
yeah,
loan?
there's people that do, but certainly not us, and not most of our farmers. And so, yeah, just culturally, it works a lot better with sort of Amish Mennonite communities that we found, and yeah, so far we've got a good relationship with them. So,
Dang, that's crazy.
yeah,
And so your guys, so you have them grow the eggs, they grab them, they put them in a cooler, then your delivery driver comes and picks them up,
that's
and
right.
then so he has a route where he'll go pick up all the eggs in kind of a strip or an
That's
area,
correct. Yeah.
and then he brings them to your guys' wash plant.
Yeah, right now, yeah. So right now, for the on the farmer side, the last time they have to really worry about the egg is they put it inside the cooler and then they're hands off. It'll change a little bit as we scale, but right now we pick up weekly. As we scale, it'll go to bi-weekly, which is what everyone else does. Is every 2 weeks is the way they do it. But right now, the way it works is we have a delivery driver who goes and picks up every single week, makes a route to all of our farms, comes, picks them up, takes them to a washing packing facility that's actually on one of our farms right now. And then we have two girls who wash and pack the eggs for us 3 days a week. And yeah, at the end of their 3 days of washing and packing, we've got our whole week's worth of eggs packed. Delivery driver comes back up, picks everything up, and makes his round. So right now we deliver 4 days a week. 3 of those days are down to Tennessee, and then 1 day is here in Kentucky. And that'll change quite a bit whenever we grow next year. So starting next summer, it'll be a semi truck that goes around to the vast majority of the farms. We'll kind of have two different logistics systems. One will kind of be our local route that we can still maintain operation, and then one will be kind of like outside of the Tennessee and Kentucky area. And so that route will be semi truck, picks them up every 2 weeks, takes them to a co-packer, from co-packer to either the retail distributor or like a partner
Mhm.
distributor. So yeah, so like for example, we'll be in a whole bunch of locations for one retail partner starting in the summer of next year. A semi truck can just take an entire truckload of eggs to their distribution center, and they
Mm.
can handle taking it to every single store. So in that way, we don't have to drive to all those stores. Yeah.
Got it. And so you made the shift also during this year from direct to consumer to retail.
Yep.
What was kind of spurring on that decision? Why did that happen? Because we hear, especially in the regen space, we hear a lot. I don't say we. I'm not a regenerative
Yeah.
farmer, but
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
in those circles, you hear a lot of the you should just sell direct to consumer. It's the most profit, and that probably is of an element true.
Yes.
If you have that, if you can vertically integrate as much as possible, you're going to be the most profitable in that
Yep.
situation.
That's exactly right.
But reality is reality. So what was the decision and slash process you guys went through to come to the, hey, we need to start going to retailers instead of doing just direct to consumer?
Yeah. So the first few months was a lot of transition because we started and our initial idea was we were going to send them in the mail to folks across Tennessee and Kentucky because there are companies out there doing that at a fairly large scale right now. There's Angel Acres up in Michigan, Seven Sons up in Indiana. So there's places who have thousands of birds that are sending them in the mail. Now, I will say if you go on some of their reviews, like they have broken eggs, right?
Yeah,
Like
it's hard to ship.
It's
hard to have them and get them to the grocery store without breaking.
That's exactly right. And so we had die cut foam inserts that we were putting inside the cartons. We had foam outside the cartons. We were doing everything we could to make sure the eggs didn't bust. And still, I would say probably 5% of eggs were getting broken. And almost always it was the same exact route. So we knew it was just like that UPS driver was just chucking the box, and so we just simply can't stop that from happening.
Yeah.
And so early on, that's what we were doing. We had a pretty good success rate, and again, like you pointed out, in terms of margin, your margin is better per dozen, right? Because I think we were selling on average those eggs for like $9.99 a dozen, maybe. Versus our wholesale price is like $5 a dozen, to a grocery store, and so per dozen you make a lot more money. But one, you're going to be capped at how many eggs you can sell because there's only so many people who are gonna deviate from their normal grocery store day where they go and pick up all their groceries all at once. And then so you're capped on how many customers you're going to be able to get, and then two, obviously there's an inevitable margin there where you're going to have cracked eggs and you're going to have to reimburse people. People are going to start to get grumpy that their eggs are always coming cracked, right? So there's a lot more challenges there. So couple that sort of happening simultaneously with the avian influenza outbreak last winter, where all of a sudden grocery stores were completely out of eggs, and so local grocery stores
were
just
eggs cost $7.
Yeah, and normal eggs were cost that's exactly right.
The fanciest, highest, most premium product.
Yep,
at
that's
that
exactly
time.
right.
I feel like I remember the most I ever saw eggs for ever in my whole life was like $5.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, every egg in the country is $7.
It was insane.
Like, oh gosh.
And so we started to have a couple people find us online who just say like, hey, can you sell, you guys are a local company, can you sell in our little cafe or our little grocery store here or there, or whatever it was. And so we started to get into some of those grocery stores. And really what got us in there was that the wholesale price we were offering was cheaper at the time than conventional eggs were, and so it got us into a lot of retailers really fast. And then, so at that point, we were operating two different logistics systems simultaneously. We were like, by day, we were like washing and packing eggs to go to retailers. And then by night, we were like not washing and packing some eggs that were going to get shipped out in the mail. And that frankly was just like too much labor. Like it was super inefficient to try to do both things.
That's the other thing, direct to consumer. It's like the effort and energy that goes into that. Yes, it's technically more profitable, but if you don't have intentions of scaling to a massive facility that's going to have its own shipping and logistics, like actually your labor, when you consider that, is actually like you're probably not actually making that much money because instead of, once again, you're not shipping you're shipping pallets instead of boxes with grocery retail.
That's exactly
It's like, yeah, it's still got to go in and package everything, but you're not putting everything in one box, sealing it up, delivering it to whoever's, all that stuff.
That's exactly right. And then you're also forcing yourself. Like if you're gonna let's say you want to scale direct to consumer, you're forcing yourself to vertically integrate from the get-go, right? Because you're not going to be able to find a co-packer or somebody like that who's going to be able to wash and pack your eggs and then, not just like put them on a truckload and ship them out.
Yeah.
They're going to take them to UPS for you or schedule UPS. Like that system just does not exist, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you're forcing yourself into this kind of like pigeonhole where you're going to have to vertically integrate everything, and that's going to require a high, capital investment. Whether it's, for a great example of that is like eggs. The state of Kentucky requires that every egg that's washed and sold, or that's sold, is washed and refrigerated. So regardless of whether or not we know that it's better for the egg and it's going to last longer, if you don't wash the egg, we legally have to wash the egg, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so now you have to have the capital required to wash your own eggs. Well, if you scale to 3,000 birds, even you're not going to be able to wash that many eggs in your sink, so you have to buy a washer. Refrigeration, right? You have to have a cooler large enough to store a couple pallets worth of eggs. Not only that, but you have to have a refrigerated delivery vehicle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's going to cost more. That's not just like, you can't just like throw some eggs in the back of your pickup truck and take them down to some retailer. It has to be refrigerated on its delivery. And so, that's a $50,000 investment right there. So all these pieces of the puzzle, as you sort of do this sort of direct to consumer thing, you're forcing yourself to increase your capital investment right up front. And so, yeah, if you go the other route and you start to look at retailers, one, there's an existing market, right? Because now you're not having to go out and find customers. You're going to a place where the customers are looking for a product like yours if you have the right product.
And your marketing goes from, I'm targeting a specific type of consumer
Yes.
who wants to buy this food online, is willing to pay a premium,
Exactly.
to we just need broader brand awareness, so that
That's
way,
exactly right.
should they come across us
That's
in the
exactly
grocery
right.
store, we
Yep.
make that connection.
That's
Like
exactly
your
right.
entire
Yes.
marketing funnel is completely different because
Exactly.
you're
Yep.
instead of targeting for depth, you're targeting for breadth. Of like, okay, we just need people to know who we are now
exactly
and know
right.
that we're different in this way.
Yep.
And then hopefully that triggers something in the grocery store.
That's exactly
I think
right.
you said something earlier too, is like the grocery store is a habit. Like we don't think of it that way because it is like, I have to go and make some decisions and put
Yep.
stuff in my cart and spend the money, but like you're gonna go grocery shopping
Yes.
every week. And even like we'll do grocery pickup and things like that. And even then, like you're always usually getting something different than you actually ordered because like they're picking it off the shelf or they don't have it and things like that. And so there's always that element still, even in the age of online, where people are like, no, I want to go to the store and pick out my own groceries.
Yes.
I want to grab my own produce. I want to buy my own meat. I want to get
Yep.
this thing that I know I really like. I'm probably going to get some other little like soda or thing
Yep.
on there too, because that's what you do when you go to the
Yep.
grocery
Yep.
store. And so it's this habit that it's going to be really hard to convince someone to switch to buying their eggs online.
That's
because
exactly right.
especially if they're going to break 5% of the time, like it's going to be hard to convince people to like it's not like beef that you can freeze and buy once every 2 or 3 months. I'm going to spend $300 online shipping beef versus I'm going to buy eggs every single week because I cook them every single week.
Exactly right. Yeah.
So
And I think it's twofold. One, it's if you're going to do direct to consumer, your population of consumers that you're going to reach is going to be small. You're going to cap yourself at some point, no matter who you are, right? Even Pasture Bird is a great example. Paul Grieve with Pasture Bird, like they started out direct to consumer, shipping chicken in the boxes to folks, but now they're in Sprouts, right? Because at a certain point, like you're only going to reach so many people who are willing to buy their chicken from one website and their beef from another website and their eggs and their milk and for everybody, all their necessities from different places. So going into retailers, you're opening yourself up to way more customers. Let me.
Delivery driver.
Yeah, no, he's delivering pallets of some flats, I think. Let me go handle that. Let me make this point real quick, and then so I don't forget, and then we'll go out there. The other piece of that is that we have to decide, I think, from like my end as a supplier, as a company, do we want to try to change the entire food system, or do we want to change how products are produced, right? And so to me, it's a much more effective and manageable solution to try to change, to shift the market on how food is produced than it is how food is purchased, right? So it's much easier for us as farmers to own the responsibility to say, okay, well, over the course of 5 years, I'm going to change my operation from, monocrop to at least partially regenerative or something like that. Or I'm going to change I've got a cage-free barn right now. I'm going to change that and make it free range, and I'm going to allow access for the chickens. I have, nothing out on pasture right now. Okay, I'm going to start to put inputs like cattle and chicken on there, right? Like that is a much simpler solution at the farm level than I'm going to change the entire food system from everyone purchases at a grocery store right now to the entire American population is going to start buying from local food market or farmers markets or from their local farmer, right? Like that is just not a realistic change that we're going to make. And so let's change the food system by changing the way that we produce food, not necessarily by the place that people find food. And even Joel Salatin, I've met with Joel Salatin now. There's a day I spent a whole day with Joel Salatin, and even he, who is like the godfather of like the local food movement, will tell you that farmers markets right now are a social club, not a means by which we're going to change the food industry, right?
Yes.
And so that's what our little mini manifesto on our website talks about. That where it's like I think it's far more important that we change on-farm practices and start to shift that than it is we try to convince every American to like stop buying from Whole Foods or from Sprouts or that kind
And
of thing.
our food system is so trend based too that
Yes.
it's fickle might not be the right word, but people change like whatever buzzword is in is in. Like
That's exactly right.
organic
Yep.
can mean so many
Yes,
things,
yeah, very
and
much
people
so.
just buy it because
Yep.
they think
Yep.
X, Y, and Z,
That's
even though
exactly
they're
right.
just like we have regenerative, we have organic, we have
Yep.
grass fed, we have
Very much
pasture
so.
raised, we
Yeah.
have all these different terms that will cycle through at some point. So
Yeah.
how do we at the farm level say like this is where we're at? Okay.
Yeah, and then again on top of that, like I personally don't think that it's a feasible, um, even midterm goal to say that we're gonna decentralize the food system so that like everything that's raised in Kentucky stays and is sold in Kentucky.
Yeah.
Like that's just not a realistic. Maybe it is for Kentucky because we have so much agriculture here, but like
Yeah.
in Colorado, for example, or out west, or really anywhere, New York, something like that, like you're just not going to be able to produce enough decentralized food systems to feed, Chicago, right? Like
Yeah, we can't
it's not going
have.
to happen.
There's not enough people willing to step out of the jobs they have now to
That's
say,
exactly right.
"I'm going to farm 5 acres super densely, and I'm going to do a bunch of
That's
manufacturing." Like,
exactly
there's just
right. Yeah.
not enough people willing to do the work to make that happen.
And I also don't think there's enough like commercial retail space to say like, okay, well, every other block is going to have its own, a small market, and that's just going to be for that, couple of city blocks, or like it's just not. It's just truly not feasible to move away from the grocery store model in the foreseeable future. And so, what I think it's much more important to focus our effort on as sort of like farmers or people who are interested in progressing the food model that we have is focusing on what can we do on farms
Hmm.
and scaling processes that we know are more sustainable and will have greater inputs or greater outputs for the long run, right? And so, like
Hmm.
that's where regenerative agriculture kind of piques my interest, is because you can look at different models. Who knows? Everybody kind of agrees that our topsoil is getting depleted, right? And so, how do we create a system that increases the topsoil and ensures that future generations are able to use the same land that we're using today 100 years from now to feed the nation,
Yeah.
right? Like that is a much more interesting and solvable problem than like we need people to stop buying food at grocery stores, right? Like,
Yeah.
and so that's
I,
kind of
I
yeah,
tell people all the time, like, the reason that regenerative agriculture has made a name for itself in a good and bad way is because it makes very bold claims about how it solves all the problems.
yes, yeah,
And
yeah,
it's like, no, it's the principle of it that helps
yes,
solve a problem. That I always tell people, like, whether you disagree with all of it or some of it,
mm,
everyone agrees we want our farms, our special. We can all agree we want our family farms to exist in 100 years, right?
yes,
Like
yeah,
we don't want the continued decline of the family farm.
yeah,
I think everyone agrees with that. We all want to make sure our operation survives for another 100 years. We're
mhm,
all on the same page there.
yes,
We get into the methodologies and people start to
that's
disagree with
exactly right.
each
Yeah.
other. It's like, hey, we're all actually working towards a similar thing, and as long as we can get on the same page there, it's like, hey, we're going to disagree on some things, but we all want to make sure that our
Yeah,
farms and our dirt and our
that's
operations
exactly right.
survive for the long run. So how do we change at the farm level to
Yep,
make sure that happens?
that's
Because we
exactly right.
can't if we wait around for everyone else to make the changes,
Yep.
then we're going to be left with nothing in our
Yeah.
hands. And that's how it's been going. It's like, well, they need to make some changes. The
Yeah.
consumers need to do this.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
consumers need to
That's
do this. Like,
exactly
well,
right.
the consumers are going to do what the consumers are
Yes.
going to do, and you can meet their needs or you can fight with them. Those
Yes.
are your options. Either supply the needs they have or you fight with them. And the more we fight with them, the
That's
less our
exactly right.
industry. Yeah.
And I also think that, well, I have a lot of thoughts, but one of them is that I think consumers are trying to do the right thing, right? Like they're trying to make sure they're buying from sustainable, humane operations. The problem on the farm side is that Vital Farms, for example, is a $1 billion company. They're publicly traded. Like they're on the New York Stock Exchange, right? Like
Yeah.
their goal is not to create small, sustainable farms that produce the highest quality egg. Their goal is to maximize profit. That's it. That's what they exist to do, right? And so corporations have sort of taken control of this quote unquote humane welfare thing and bastardized it into what it is today, which is 20, 40,000 bird barns labeled as pasture raised, right? And at least in the egg space. They do the same thing in chicken. And then, with grass-fed beef, it's like, well, they can still have feedlots and they just put hay in front of the cow and then all of a sudden it's grass-fed beef,
And
right?
they'll spin up these big CPG companies. They will spin up these
Yep.
brands that
That's
will,
exactly right.
from all the outset, like, oh, it checks all the boxes,
Yep.
it meets all,
Yep.
and like you go down the layers and layers and layers, and you're like, oh, it's all owned by Tyson
Yes.
or JBS
Yeah.
or Smithfield. Like it's all
Yep.
the big food companies specifically, like even PepsiCo. Like
Mm.
PepsiCo's been buying a bunch of the probiotic soda companies and all the
exactly right.
healthy drink
Yep.
brands. Why? Because they want to bring, like, they know that's where the trend is going, but they're
Mm.
going to want to make sure they have control
That's
of
exactly
that.
right.
And whatever, they can do whatever they want to do with it. That's fine. They're companies. I believe they have
Yeah.
the right to do that. But I
Yeah.
think I do agree it's wrong to deceive consumers into thinking they have something that they really don't have.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And so I think on the customer level, the customer, again, like we sell in Sprouts, for example, right? Like the population buying in Sprouts is a lot different than the population at large buying in Walmart, for example, right? So like we're targeting an audience that we know is looking for a product like this. So, but all that to say, there are customers looking for humane, sustainable operations to buy their food from. The problem is that corporations have sort of bastardized that, right? And so on the farmer side, like we can take ownership of that as the problem and say, okay, well, we're going to offer what these big guys are selling. We can highlight through education that they're not actually doing that, and then we're going to sell what people are actually looking for, right? And so like whenever I go to and I do store demos, because I do store demos almost every week now, and we go do a demo in a store, I show what a pasture raised barn looks like and a free range barn, what all those look like. And then I show what our operations look like. And then I explain the difference between all of them. And like every single time, customers are like, oh, well, yeah, I'm going to buy because this is what I thought I was buying the entire time.
Yeah.
I didn't think I was buying from 40,000 birds shoved into a barn with 1 square foot, 1.2 square feet of space per bird inside the barn. That's not what I thought. I was buying pasture raised from chickens that were raised outdoors, living the good life, right? And so I think there's a huge market for people who are, small companies who do what they actually claim. Like that, there's a gigantic market for that.
Genuine transparency.
Yes,
Not marketing,
yes, that's exactly
not
right.
greenwashing.
Yes.
This is actually what's
Yes,
happening.
yeah,
Like,
exactly.
you can come and look at what we're doing.
And
Like,
that's the big difference between us. And one thing that we even put it on our packaging is that you can come visit one of our farms, right? And like if you are a customer, you're interested, you can schedule time to come see one of the farms. The big companies would never let their customers come see their newest 20,000 bird build because then it would just shatter the entire facade that they have going on, right? And so, yeah, I think there's a huge market, and not even just in the egg space. I think even if people understood what really went into corn production or soybean or whatever it is, like if they just saw the behind the scenes and what it really looked like, they'd have a much greater appreciation. And even for the guys who are doing things like monocrops, that's still a necessary product right now in the system that we have, right? And so like highlight that to consumers and bridge that disconnect so that people who are out there saying we should not have any monocrops, starting now. It's like, well, do you really understand the ramifications of something like that? And this is where again, I differ from the big companies, but I also differ from some of the folks in regenerative. Is that like I'm fully willing to admit that all of our corn and soybean and our chicken food right now comes from probably monocrop farmers, right? And like our operation cannot exist without the existence of those systems right now. In 50 years, maybe that can change, and all of
Hmm.
those monocrops can start to move towards a more sustainable system. That's fantastic, but right now we can't exist without them, right? Um, but yeah, all that just circling around, I guess, to say that I think customers are doing the right thing. I think companies are doing the right thing, and I think there's a huge model for that sort of in between, where it's you're a smaller company and you are fully transparent about whatever your operation is. Even if you do have, let's say, you're a free range barn, and you've got you're a small family farm with 3,000 birds in a barn, like you can still show people that, and people will appreciate that you're at least being transparent over
Hmm.
being lied to by
Yeah, I
time
think
time
I
again.
think that's really what consumers want. They want like I think like I said, consumers are kind of fickle and the trends that go on. Like
Mhm.
really they don't want I mean they want to feel good about what they're buying and things like that.
Yeah.
What they think they're getting is transparency.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's what they're actually buying. They're
Yeah.
actually buying transparency. Like if you are a consumer in the store, you just want to know you have the option. I think that's going to be a huge part of food marketing in the future is the I know where this came from, or I can at least find it out if I'm willing. I
Yeah.
don't need
Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
how many of your customers are actually coming and doing farm
Yeah.
tours?
Not very many. Yeah.
A
Yeah.
tiny,
Yeah.
tiny fraction of a percentage are
Yeah.
probably coming and doing that.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's there builds a lot of trust for them.
That's exactly
And I
right.
think as we continue to see the evolution of, healthier food options, the health is medicine or
Yep.
the food is medicine
Yep.
movement, like we're gonna see that's going to have to be the standard. We're
Mhm.
going to have a lot more protocols of like,
Yeah.
hey, I want to be able to look at my package. I want to know exactly where every ingredient comes from.
Mhm.
Most
Yeah.
people aren't going to do it, but
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
there's going to be a select few, and there'll be the loud few that say this is what matters.
Yeah. Yeah.
Influencers are the best at it when they say like, don't buy this because it has this X,
Yeah.
Y,
Yeah.
and Z
Yep.
in it. And it's
Yep.
like whether it's true or not true, like
Yeah.
consumers see that and they care about that.
I
So
know.
the
Yeah.
more you can be transparent about that, the more power in marketing you're going to have
For
because
sure.
that's just what they're going to want. Like that's
Mhm.
going to be, I think, in 10 years, the standard will be you have to be transparent about where
Yeah.
stuff is coming from. And there'll probably be people that get around it, but I think even regulation will get to the point where it's like, hey, you have to be able to disclaim
Mhm.
these things to fit this check bar
Yep.
because
Yeah.
regenerative and pasture raised and organic like we have qualifications for them
Yeah.
kind of at the
Yeah.
brand level, but also we kind of don't. Like there's that's still being figured out enough
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
like at some point
Which,
it'll change maybe.
yeah, that's another. If you really want to get me going on a rabbit hole,
We can get into
is
lobbying and all that too if you want.
well, that's what I was going to talk about certifications, right? Because we and it's kind of just timing. We last week, I went and met with a certifier um, who is one of the humane certifiers, right? And so they're one of the people or one of the certification companies that classify things like free range or
Mhm.
pasture raised. And so one of the things that we have run into is like, let's say we want to sell private label to a company,
Mhm.
and they want to buy they want to start their own regenerative egg line, like your Sprouts, and you want to start or any of these companies, you want to start a regenerative egg line, right? You buy those companies buy from people like us under their own label.
Mhm.
Um, well, sometimes they may have a requirement that says, okay, you have to have your eggs certified by this specific certifier, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so then we go to the certifier and we say, okay, we want to sell to this company. What do we need to do to meet your certification requirements for
Mhm.
to be certified, right? Well, one of the things we're running into right now is that to be certified pasture raised, your barn, whatever your housing structure is, has to have 1.2 square feet per bird, or some of them will say in a mobile system you have to have 1 square foot per bird. That is designed around a system that is not built like our mobile houses, right?
Mhm.
That's designed based on, let's say you have just like a greenhouse on skids. I call it a schooner style, right? Where the chickens are on the ground and they may not be let out, right?
Chicken
And you just
tractor model
yeah, like
where
a
it's
chicken tractor. That's
attached.
exactly right, a chicken tractor model, right? So the chickens don't have to necessarily be let out, and they're on the ground, right? So that 1 square foot for that kind of system, 1 to 2 square feet per bird might make sense, right? For our system, almost all of our housing structures are what we call like a wagon style, where it's on a wagon frame. There's wheels underneath. We put slatted flooring inside so the manure falls through, right? We open up the doors early on in the morning so the chickens can come and go as they please as soon as they
Mhm.
wake up. If they need shade, they can get underneath. They can go inside the house. They can go underneath the house, right? So we've essentially doubled how many square footage you have. But then they also have, even if we use poultry netting around the chicken house, you have, literally hundreds of square feet per bird that they have access to, and then we're, moving that along. So then now they're not just getting, that piece of pasture, they're getting all the fresh pasture as we move it, right? We do not qualify as pasture raised. Our company,
because the inside space
because
doesn't.
the inside square footage of our housing structures is half of what everyone else of what a commercial factory farm barn is, right? So we who rate 100% of our chickens are outdoors. If we sell it as pasture raised, 100% of those chickens go outdoors. 100%. Not, 99, 100% of the chickens are outdoors and raised on pasture.
But you don't
And
qualify.
we cannot qualify to be certified as pasture raised because the industry certification standard is geared towards factory farming, right? And so we found a certifier just yesterday. I met with them, or the other day I met with them, who is going to try to develop some standards specifically for our model. Because what I explained to them was like, our company is on the forefront of this becoming much more mainstream. What started with Joel Salatin and Seven Sons and these kind of like individual family farms is going to become a mainstream thing. We may be the first in the country to scale it to the point where we're in a nationwide sale. We're in nationwide sales, but we're not going to be the only ones, right? And so you can either develop a model now or a certification, a system that works around that model now, or you can wait and then we will no longer need you because we'll have established such a name that we just don't even need you anymore, right? So, so we found somebody who I think is going to try to kind of partner with us, and we'll develop like standards alongside for some of these practices. But still, the primary certifier in the industry will not certify us as pasture raised, even though 100% of our birds are raised on pasture, and in certified pasture raised systems, virtually none of the birds are raised on pasture.
And it makes you wonder, okay, so how does the money work out? Because I'm assuming you have to pay for that certification,
That's
as most
exactly
third
right.
parties are. You have to pay
That's exactly
either
right.
X amount of dollars a year or for the process for
Yes.
them to come do it.
So it's both.
And so if
Yeah.
a big company comes in and says, hey, we need you to certify all these
That's
barns,
exactly right.
they're going to make a bunch of money off those guys because that's
exactly
how
right.
it works. And
That's
so
exactly right.
we don't like to say it, but it's kind of one of those things too. It's like most journalism these days, it's like, well, your primary revenue comes from advertising.
Yep.
So if X company spends enough amount with advertising with you, you're probably going to be like, yeah, we're not going to write negative things about you
Yep. That's exactly right.
because we know that if we write a negative thing, you're going to pull advertising dollars.
That's exactly
And it's kind of this like, it's not a purposeful stranglehold, but it's one of those things that's like, hey, just so you know, you do spend a lot of money. It creates this unintentional control.
That's right. And again, I understand the certifier is going to make money. Personally, I think that entire industry is a grift. Like that's what I tell
The
my
certifying industry.
Yeah, the certifying industry, because I've seen incredibly inhumane systems be certified as humane. I've seen chickens that do not go outside a single day in their life be certified pasture raised or certified free range, and that exists in grass-fed beef, and exists in broilers, and exists in all these industries, right? But there's this sort of like around individuals and companies who are actually doing the action of changing the food system. There's this like whole infrastructure that's just a giant grift around it, and certifiers, in my opinion, are one of the key problems in that, because again, like you said, they're financially incentivized not to hold those companies accountable, but rather to certify the egg, so that every egg, because they get paid by every egg that gets sold, right? So if they decrease how many eggs are sold under their certification, they decrease their own revenue. Well, they're not financially incentivized to hold anybody accountable. And I have that problem with even certifiers who I think are more ideologically driven. There's other issues, like there's regenerative certifications, for example, that will allow you to get certified as regenerative up to a certain point, but then all of your feed has to be from certified regenerative operations as well. And so my problem with that is like, okay, I'm okay with that again as a 50-year solution, but a 3-year solution, you're
Mhm.
going to double the price of the eggs
Yeah,
if
yeah,
you require me to buy my feed from a certified regenerative operation, because the cost of there's so few certified regenerative corn and soybean farms in the United States that
yeah,
in order for me to buy that, it's going to double my feed cost for my farmers.
yeah.
So I have to double my payment to the farmers, which is going to double the cost of your eggs on the grocery store. So again, and this has been one of my big things is like we didn't. I'm sure, if we really wanted to, we could probably sell our eggs in the grocery store for $12 or $13 or
Yeah,
something
yeah.
like that, because we're the only ones claiming, regenerative eggs. But
But
I don't want to do that.
then it prevents also a scaling issue
Well,
of
that's
like, well,
exactly
hey,
right.
like we're now trying to sell a very premium product to a much smaller
Smaller.
group because
Exactly.
people, especially eggs, because it's so consumable. It's
Yes.
like I will not spend that much money on
That's
eggs,
exactly right.
no matter how good it makes me feel. Because
Yes.
$13 is just is
That's
a lot
exactly
of
right.
money.
Right. And so from the get go, we wanted to make sure that we were offering a incredibly high quality product at a price that people who are already buying in that sort of sphere could afford. And so our price is competitive with Vital Farms, Pete and Jerry's, Happy Egg, all those big gigantic companies who have much better margins than me. Our prices still stay the same as all those big guys, so that we can so that we can change the food system like we were talking about earlier, right? Because again, if my goal is not to change how and where people buy their food, it's what our on-farm practices look like. The only way I do that is by taking shelf space from companies who are doing it the wrong way, right?
And we don't like the 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 beauty of U.S. agriculture, and also probably one of the downfalls of U.S. agriculture is like we have pretty cheap food,
Yeah.
and people like cheap food.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
we are in an age, especially with the way inflation's been. Like the egg price thing this year really showed it. It's
Yes.
like people, like even if they have disposable income, like we're spending more probably on food than we ever have in history, just because we eat out a lot more
Yeah.
than we
Yep.
used to. But like you look at it, like people really don't want to pay more for their groceries,
Yeah.
and so you're competing with like the entire U.S. food system's not going to change the way we
Yes.
want it to, because
Yeah.
consumers are not willing to pay that 30 to 40% premium
Yep.
that comes with having to put the extra work in to do that. Like
That's
this model does take more work
Mm-hmm.
to make the same amount of money as someone with a 40,000,
Yes.
you know,
Yep.
hen chicken operation.
Yeah.
I keep wanting to say head,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not cattle.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
stuff like that. Like it's not gonna, like that's just not gonna happen. So the only way to do it is to start from the bottom and eventually scale the same way
Yep.
and amortize those costs. Because
Yep.
you can't expect the consumer to make that change before you're willing to change.
That's
So if
exactly
you meet their price, you can adopt them, and through the economies of scale,
Mhm.
the same way the other economies of scale work on the industrial side,
Yep.
you're going to be able to possibly reach that price point and even maybe garner a premium. And ideally, in the perfect world, we don't farm by ideals, but
Yeah.
like you're going to be more profitable because your inputs are lower in the
Yes.
long run.
Yeah.
It's a 100-year view. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, 100-year view, we're spending less money
That's
on our
exactly right.
operation to be making the same amount of money and
Yep.
hopefully reaching that. But like,
Yeah.
there's a huge roadmap. In front
That's
of that.
exactly right.
So,
Yeah. And yeah, going back to inputs, even like, feed consumption decreases in our systems spring to fall. Why? Because the chickens eat so much bugs and grass, and they're eating live things outside, so they don't need as much feed spring to fall. And so if you're a farmer, your feed consumption drops, 3/4 of the year or whatever, 2/3 of the year maybe. Um, and yeah, so like, why would you not do? It's kind of like grass-fed beef. Like, uh, obviously, you get more pound. You can increase how many pounds you're selling on the hoof or whatever whenever you shove them full of grain. But you also have to pay for that input. And so if I can raise a 1,000-pound steer on just grass with zero upfront costs other than the purchasing it as a calf or whatever it might be. Yeah, it's just, to me, it's a lot simpler. It's a lot simpler and requires a lot less inputs.
So, what would you tell like a young farmer who's either in the industry or wants to get in
Mm.
about like, hey, like the options out there are more than like what you think they are?
Yeah.
Like, how do we encourage that like mindset of trying new things, adapting? Like, not
Mm.
everyone can be you, obviously.
Yeah.
Like, not everyone can have the operation you have.
Yeah.
Like, you've discovered a niche, then you're going to go headlong into it. That's not for
Yeah.
everyone. But like, how do you encourage that mindset of like we can do things differently?
Yeah. Well, I think starting small is probably the most important thing, right? Like we didn't jump from 0 birds to 20,000 birds all in mobile coops overnight, right?
Yeah, it
And
only took
so
12 months.
yeah, 12.
Not overnight.
It doesn't feel overnight anyways to me, but all that, we started really small, right? We started with 300 birds. That's pretty. At the end of the day, I could find people on my road to buy 300 birds worth of eggs, right?
Hmm.
And that's probably, I think that's the case with anything. Is if you're young, do find a really good product market fit, right? And find, you know, there's going to be something that interests you if you're interested in agriculture, right? And like whether that's ancient grains, right, or that's like cooney pigs, or there's like all these like small little niches
Yeah.
within agriculture right now that are, I think, really really interesting.
You don't have to bet the whole
And you
farm to
don't have to
try
bet.
them.
That's exactly right. And so I think it's two things. One, if you have nothing right now, like let's say you have no land, no farm, no anything right now, there are some operations out there that require very little input that you could go out and lease land. Let's say you could lease 5 acres and you can rotationally graze a handful of head of cattle on that, right? Like you can start really, really small and start direct to consumer, or get into a local butcher shop or something. Like
Yeah.
you can start really small and find a good product market fit before you're like, okay, we're gonna go all in on whatever this is,
Yeah.
right? And so that's what, yeah, my big thing is, yeah, find a good product market fit, and then find something that. The other thing is like with technology, is like you can do things with really low capital investment, and so
Hmm.
like because we scaled so fast, we did put in quite a bit of capital investment, but you don't have to do that,
Yeah.
right? And you don't have to, like, our goal is to scale to nationwide distribution of regenerative eggs, right? Like that's our goal. That doesn't have to be everyone's goal,
Yeah.
right? And it really shouldn't be your goal unless unless you're like, I'm going to be like the entrepreneur of entrepreneurs. I'm going to scale this thing to nationwide distribution in 5 years. Like,
Most people don't like. They like the idea of it. As you know,
yes,
you run a business, I run a business. Like the idea of scale is way more stressful and work than
oh,
anyone
for
like.
sure,
So that doesn't have to be everyone. Like
no,
there's definitely a market where you're a supplier for someone else, or you're like, hey, like I grow 10 acres of
hmm,
this niche specialty food
yes,
crop that I have a private contract
yep,
with some sort of
that's exactly right,
distributor, some sort of processor like that, where I just have a premium over that.
yep,
It's like, hey, I can profitably sell this. I mean, I could make more money if I was owning the whole thing, but
yeah.
like that's not for everyone.
I met a 20-year-old Mennonite kid a couple months ago who, his uncle owns a chicken processor here locally, and they have one buyer. One buyer. That's it. They have one buyer who has been interested in buying pasture-raised chickens from them. They, I think, did 20,000 pasture-raised broilers this year. He has no website, no marketing, no like very little. All he has is a bunch of like chicken tractors,
Uh huh.
and then he pays for feed, and then his uncle processes them and takes a cut to pay for the processing costs. Like,
Yeah.
he's 20 years old.
He's probably making a killing.
He's probably making a killing. 20,000 broilers, right?
Yeah.
And again, I was like, whenever I met him, I was like, and he said all that. I was like, well, what's the name of your farm? He's like, oh, we don't really have a farm name. I was like, you guys have a website or a card or brochure? No, no, not really. We just have, I think it was actually 2 customers that they have that buy everything
Yeah.
from.
But
But
still,
like,
that's a crap ton of people.
yeah, but like, so you don't have to find, you don't have to be in every Sprouts. You don't have to be in you don't have to be in every grocery store. Like we didn't get into a major retailer until probably 3 or 4 months ago, I think.
Hmm.
Um, but like, we're still in dozens of independent retailers, right? And so you can find a cafe, you can find,
Yeah.
there's so many more ways. I mean, shoot, if you're like a Gen Zer who's on TikTok, you could probably sell, I don't know what the rules of TikTok are or whatever, but you could probably sell like grass-fed beef, or you could
On
sell
TikTok
on
shop,
TikTok shop or something.
probably.
There's literally an infinite amount of ways that you can create your own little niche in the market and then turn around and sell that in a way that nobody else is doing it.
100%.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's what I think is really interesting. Like, I kind of what I did was I took what all of the big egg companies are doing and I applied it to just a new production model, right? And that's one way to do it, but you can do it. I mean, there's literally just so many ways right
Yeah.
now that you can find a little niche in a market. And there's a saying that's like, the riches are in the niches, right? Like,
Yeah.
what is a niche right now? Like pasture raised eggs is a great example.
Yeah.
15 years ago, pasture raised eggs was this like tiny sliver of the egg market.
Hmm.
30 years ago, pasture raised eggs didn't even really exist,
Hmm.
right? and now it's a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Yeah, and in 30 years, there will be something else again.
That's exactly
That
right.
who knows? Like you kind of had that opportunity where it's like, hey, egg prices skyrocketed. I have a wave that
Yep.
I can ride. There will be another wave one day
That's
in
exactly right.
something too.
Yep.
In 20 years, who knows what it
That's
could
exactly
be?
right. Yep. That's
Whatever
exactly.
whatever terms we have or whatever things like
Mhm.
there's going to be a market that pops up. And there will probably be an upward trajectory, and if you can catch the upward
Yeah.
trajectory, you can ride it up, and as long as you can make the right decisions, you can stay in that
That's right.
category for a while and
Yep.
become a player there.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
then, who knows, business is a very fickle thing. It also
Yeah.
changes very frequently, but it's one of those things like, you rode the wave and you are the regenerative egg people
Yeah.
now. It's like, okay, you're the regenerative egg people. You can be the regenerative egg people forever
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And you can also maybe be something else one day
Yes.
too.
That's exactly
Like
right.
there's
Yeah.
other opportunities
Yeah.
that you can't be everything at once now. But
That's right.
right now you're like, hey, we can be this really, really well.
Yeah.
We know what we're doing. It's our niche. We can own it.
Yep.
And you can ride that.
Yep.
And who knows? We're only a few years into
Yeah.
this, so who
Yeah.
knows what could happen in the next
Yeah.
10 years. But it's one of those things like the opportunities are there if you open your eyes and are willing to say, I can do this differently.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, and I think it's not about like again, we recognized a trend in the agriculture market before the big guys are going to like all the big egg companies are not going to take millions of dollars to change how they currently they're making billions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars right now. They're not going to change their entire system right now because there's no pressure, there's no reason for them to, right? But there is a trend in the market to move towards this production style of eggs, and so yeah, we recognize that. But that being said, it's like you also shouldn't chase like fickle trends sometimes. Like
Yeah.
like think about like remember NFTs was a thing or whatever, like those online digital arts or whatever,
Yeah.
and people were selling them for like millions of dollars or whatever,
And now they're worth nothing.
and now it's like yeah, they're worth nothing, right? And so like I think you do have to look and say, okay, like, do I think this is a potential long-term viable option, right? And you can look at, like, for us, for example, like we look at Europe, right? The egg market and the food market in general is about 15 years behind in America what it is in
Yep.
in Europe, and so that mobile housing has been a much more common thing in Europe for a long time,
Mhm.
and so we can look at that and we can say, okay, well, it's been a viable market option over there for a long
Yep.
time. That means there's potential that it'll be a viable long-term market option here. But also avoid. Yeah, there are trends out there that you should also avoid. And so and also don't go chasing terms that I don't think you can back up. Like there's
It has to be true to what you're already doing. I
Yeah.
think that's the other thing too. It's like business cannot be true of someone else's business. Your business, what you do has to be true of what you do and nothing else. Like
Yeah.
the longer you're looking at everyone else and saying that's how I have to operate,
Yeah.
the more distracted you're gonna get. Like
Yep.
if you focus like, hey, I think I can own this myself
Yep.
versus I see them owning it over there. Let me try to replicate it. They can say like, hey, I think it kind of like not everyone can be Joel Salatin.
Yes.
That's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
a fact.
Yeah.
You can't. If everyone tried to do that, like we wouldn't have any food infrastructure
exactly
left in our
right.
country
Yep.
because not everyone can do that. They have to figure it out for themselves. They have to say, I can learn something from you, but
Mhm.
at the end of the day, my operation's different and I have
Yes.
to make it work here.
Yep.
Guys farming in California, totally different story than people farming in Kentucky.
That's
Like
exactly right. Yep.
totally different mindset. So how can I learn from that? How can I innovate?
Yes.
How can I find my niche? And just fortify yourself for the long term.
Yeah.
There are fickle things that you can chase. So find the things that are, hey, I know this is tried, I know this is tested, I know this is true. Like there's a couple people doing it, could
Yeah.
do this. Like, but there is so much opportunity out there. Like the
Yeah.
food we're in, people like to complain like, oh, it's so hard to get an ag these days.
Yeah,
I'm like, yeah, if you want to get into farming 100 acres, yes,
yeah,
it requires
yeah.
a lot of
Yeah.
money to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And even farm 5 acres, we're at
Yeah.
a point where it is kind of
Yeah,
expensive
yeah,
too. But it's
sure.
like, hey, renting. Like there are
Yes.
people who own land that have specific ideas that they want
Uh-huh.
from their renters too.
Yep,
Like
yep.
the eco-conscious landlord is a very real thing. And
Very much so.
I'm from California originally. Like if you own land, they're gonna say like, hey, you can rent this for me to do your things on, but like I want you to do X, Y, and Z
Yep, that's exactly
this
right.
way because I own it at the end of the day and you're a tenant.
Yep.
So there's opportunities there too where it's like, hey, like rent the land, do it there. Like
Yeah.
that's my model. I can't afford land.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, okay, if I want to start, I could rent, start small scale.
Yep.
And because of the things like the internet and just the ability to access either marketing channels or processing channels or just relationships through things like that, it's like never in the history of agriculture have you been able to find someone on the other side of the coast to buy a product from you as easily
that's
as you
exactly
can
right.
now.
Yep, that's exactly right. And one thing I was even thinking about this for like our kids because we were in like a little trap line just around the perimeter of the farm here, right? And like, we like to take our kids hunting and fishing and stuff like that. And it's like, with almost no input. I was talking about this with my wife about like potential business for our kids, right? It's like you could, let's say you harvest a deer, right? In today's world, you could video yourself and the whole process leading up, all the gear you're using, all your processes to go, how you're going out and hunting, what your camo. You can highlight all of that. You can make money on each of that too, right? Because if you get brand partnerships to show what you're hunting with and yada yada, you can make money on all of that. Then you can show yourself processing a deer, how you cut it up, right? You can educate your consumer, people who are watching you. You can you can make money on all of that. Then you could turn around, you could turn all those pieces of, not the meat itself, because you can't sell that in Kentucky, but you could turn the antlers into a decoration. You could turn the hide into belts or shoes or whatever it is, right? You could turn around, turn that into a finished good, and you can turn around, and now your customer has watched you go from, having nothing all the way to, complete harvest of a deer, and now you're selling that, right? Like, within that process, within the harvesting of one
So many
single deer,
opportunities.
there's not only an insane amount of like content for marketing, but there's also multiple steps in there where you can monetize a revenue stream, right? And so I think
And if you followed even one of those,
yes,
there is a full-time business there for
exactly.
you.
That's
Like that's
exactly
the
right.
crazy thing to do. Like you don't have to do every single step. It's like follow one of those,
Yep.
become the guy who's really into hunting camo,
Yes.
or
Yeah.
the guy who's like, I'm the binocular
Yeah.
guy,
Yeah. Yeah.
and people
Uh-huh.
know me because
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
that. Like
Yeah.
there is entire businesses being built and run by guys who
That's
just do
exactly right.
stuff like that with a phone.
Yeah, and I think that same concept can apply to agriculture too, right?
100%.
Is like maybe let's say you're an existing I don't know, corn farmer or something like that, right? And you just start videotaping everything you do throughout the course of a day, and something catches people's attention, right? Whether it's just like the video of you like harvesting, actually doing like I've seen videos of. Like families whenever they're in their combine and their kids are like sleeping on the floor of the
Yeah.
combine
Oh,
and
those
stuff like that.
get so many views.
Yeah, and it's incredibly cute, right? But you can start to look at little things like that and say, well, like, yeah, maybe corn is the thing that like, keeps the farm up and running. But maybe there's a way for me to monetize this little step within
Oh,
that,
yeah, there's plenty of people on. I mean, you probably don't watch Millennial Farmer. Millennial Farmer has well over 1 million YouTube
Really, yeah,
subscribers, and I know how the YouTube AdSense
yeah,
works, and I can look at the videos
yeah,
he's making, and I'm like, oh, I know he's getting paid out
yes,
pretty
yeah,
good
yeah,
for
yeah,
every single one of those videos. It's like all he did was turn on a camera,
yeah,
and he
exactly.
just started making videos and
Yep.
opened up this whole market for himself and
Yep.
open up opportunities for his farm that he would never have.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
those things are available to everyone.
yeah,
Maybe not everyone wants to be,
yeah,
probably a lot of your Mennonite
yeah,
farmers are
yeah.
not going to be
That's
hopping on
exactly
TikTok
right. Yeah,
saying,
yeah,
buy
yeah.
my broilers on
Yep,
TikTok
yep.
shop. But that doesn't mean they can't find something else.
That's exactly
There's so many opportunities in our day and age that I think people expect them to come to them. You just have to put a little effort, and there's just like
Yeah.
infinite opportunities.
And I think one thing that's interesting too is like you don't need, and this was something I kind of learned early on was like you don't need 10,000 people who are sort of interested in your product. You need like 100 people who are really interested in your product, right? And so like I think on Instagram, which is our highest number of followers, we have like 1,500 followers. We have nothing. That's nothing, right? Like in today's world of social media, 1,500 is like
There's grandmas with that many
yeah,
followers.
yeah, that's exactly right,
Not
right?
to be mean.
No, you're right. And yet we sold, by the end of this year, in one fiscal year or in one calendar year, we'll sell over 90,000 dozen eggs off of 1,500 followers on Instagram.
Yeah.
Right? Like, again, we don't have 10,000 people who sort of peripherally know about us.
Yeah.
We have 1,500 people who really love us. I mean, we get people who message us that say, I will not buy eggs if I cannot find yours in the grocery store, right? And we have messages like that all the time. And the reason is because they just like our product. And so like with a very minimal following, you can generate a fairly significant amount of revenue.
Yeah. Even if you don't, I mean, we have a local dairy in our town. I'm lactose intolerant, so I can't drink normal milk.
Yep.
But I can buy milk from our local dairy. It's pasteurized but not homogenized, so the fat's still in it. So like it's pasteurized, all the stuff's out of it. It's not raw milk, but it doesn't go through one of the processes that most milk in the grocery store does. and I can drink the stuff that is non-homogenized. Like
Yes.
I can
Yep.
drink it just fine. And I will go to bat for
Yeah.
that
Yeah. Yeah.
company.
That's
Like
right. Yeah.
I will spend $7 on a gallon of milk
Yeah.
every single week, no problem, because I can drink milk again. I'll post it on my Instagram story, which I have people who follow
Yep.
me. They invited me out and gave me a tour of it and
Oh
everything.
wow.
And
Yeah.
I'm one of their biggest
Yeah.
fans and
Yeah.
advocates, and
Yeah.
I tell my friends about it all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
It's like, why? Because I love their
Yep.
product. It's different than what's normally out there. It
Mhm.
solved a problem for me, and I
Yep.
love what they do.
That's exactly
And
right.
so
Yeah.
I have now, without ever being paid a single dollar,
Yeah.
I still pay for the milk every single
Yep.
time. I will go to bat for that brand,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it. And
Yep.
I have convinced my friends to start buying their milk, and it's like, oh, they didn't pay a single dollar for
Yep.
advertising,
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
but because they had something I love, people started talking about it. And so if you can create that online, or you can create that through your packaging,
Yeah.
or you can create that through your story, like
Yep.
those are all things that are available to everyone. You don't have to do it on social media. Like
Yeah.
there's just something inherent about what you guys do that resonates with people
Mhm.
that have now created more and more opportunities
That's
for you. And
exactly
so
right. Yeah. Yeah. And so that's what. Yeah. Personally, I think in the agriculture space in general, um, I think there will be a huge opportunity for not, for us it's eggs. You see it with guys like Pasture Bird, or
mhm.
for chickens, or you see, there's all force of nature meats, or some of these, like, and the proteins, it's a little bit easier. But I think that there's a huge market opportunity regardless of what
Yeah.
your specific operation is that you're interested in. Like, it could be corn or soybean or whatever it is. There's just so many opportunities right now to, like, deviate slightly from the norm
Yeah.
and just, you know,
And I
kick
think
the door wide
the
open.
cost is high from a capital standpoint if you want to go big
Yeah.
still. But I don't know a ton about the actual processing and manufacturing side of the food system. But I can only assume with the globalization of a lot of our food system, I'm
Yeah.
assuming the cost to get into the processing side of things will continue to come down, or it'll be
Yeah.
more options in the market
Yeah.
that were cheaper than,
I think so.
okay,
Yeah.
hey, instead of having to put up a $3 million wash plant, well,
Mhm.
hey, I can put up a $300,000
Yes.
wash
Yeah.
plant, which wasn't available 10 years
Yep,
ago
that's
because
exactly
someone invented technology at a smaller scale that's still efficient
Yep.
that we can pay for.
That's
Like I
exactly
think there will be opportunities like that too in the processing space too, where it's like, I don't know how to make a granola bar at
Mhm.
all.
Yeah.
All the big companies probably have millions of dollars of machinery to
Yeah,
make
yeah,
granola bars.
yeah.
I bet you that technology will keep getting cheaper to the
Uh,
point where, like, oh,
You can make it in your
you
oven.
farm oats.
Yeah.
You can start in your oven, but
Yeah.
then, okay, now I have to build a $200,000 facility
Mhm.
instead of a $2 million facility.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
those opportunities will probably come up,
Yeah. I think so.
and then your power is going to have to come into, can I have a better story? Can I have a better product?
Mhm.
Can I have better marketing
Yep.
than the big guys?
Yeah.
That's where you're going to be able to compete.
Yep.
Because the technology requirements are coming down. So there's just the space is the next 10 years can either be the best in our industry, or they can be the
Yeah.
worst. And I think
That's right. Yeah.
it's all trending toward, it will be the best for you if you can adapt and try to change. It's
Yeah.
going to be the worst for you if you're like, no, I
Yep.
can't do that.
Yeah, and we see that already in our space with, like, Joel Salatin's a great example, right? Like, Joel Salatin, whenever he still uses the same, like, A-frame that he used whenever he started this in the 80s or something, right? Like, his mobile house has not changed, but now there's manufacturers making mobile housing systems, and, like, one of the challenges that a guy like Joel Salatin might have is, well, in the winter he might not have lighting, he may not be able to maintain production to compete with Vital Farms or Pete and Jerry's or Happy Egg, right? He may not have the technology on his farm the way he does things now to compete with those big guys. But there is innovation in the space. Like our chicken house out back is solar powered, right? It has solar powered lighting, nesting boxes. It's got, gravity fed water tanks, all, feed system. Like we have all the things that a commercial poultry barn has. We just have it scaled down and available for, a few hundred chickens instead
30
of,
years ago, unthinkable.
yeah, but that would not have
Now
existed.
it's like, oh, this is available to a lot of people.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah, and so yeah, I think there's a huge market opportunity on both the on-farm side, and I think there's also a huge opportunity for innovation in the equipment side. Is like, yeah, if you can be the guy who creates the, you can have a granola maker in your garage. You know, like there's a huge market for that because there's probably people who would rather make their own granola bars than.
Well, I think the advent of like home flour mills, that's a thing.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, that's
it used to,
exactly
like they used to be, you literally have to grind your flour
Yes,
by
yep.
hand if you wanted to like take wheat
Yeah.
berries and grind it into
Uh-huh.
flour yourself. You used to have to actually do that by hand.
Yep.
Now you can go on Amazon, buy
Yeah.
a flour grinder with stones in it for 400 or 500
Yep.
bucks.
That's right. I
That
think we
is
have one over there.
like that's innovation.
Yeah.
That's stuff that's happened in the past few years, and like the cost of that will keep going
Yes.
down. The
Yep.
more either the more people want it,
Hmm.
or the more that overseas manufacturers figure out how to do that.
Yep.
And so it's like, okay, I'm hearing that a lot more. Is like, okay, there's massive manufacturing in the big
Mhm.
CPG brands, and then
Yeah.
there's small scale you can kind of like maybe get by in your garage.
Yeah.
The middle section needs a lot of improvements. Like right there, it's like, can you make a flour mill for the
Yes.
guy who has $250,000
Yep. That's
versus the
exactly
guy who has 2,000?
right. Hmm.
Like, can
Yep.
you make that one?
Yep.
Because the guy who makes that one, you open up this massive
Yep. That's right.
market
Yeah,
for
yeah.
so many people. So there's just the space is ripe for innovation,
Mm.
improvement, market opportunities, and like
Yeah.
consumers. People like I hang out with a lot of row croppers and a
Mhm.
lot of people in the normal food system. Like I go to California enough. I'm from California
Yeah.
originally. Every single thing in my friends' fridges is organic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. If that's the case now, what's it going to be in 10 years? Like
Yeah.
there are opportunities there, and the consumers are finally starting to get on trend. Like we're going to spend at
Mhm.
least a little more on our food. It's not going to be
Yeah.
a lot. They're always going
Yeah.
to want semi-affordable food,
Yeah.
but consumers do want quality products. They want high quality products.
Yeah.
Like they want nutritional products.
Yep.
So it's coming. It's going to keep getting bigger. It's going to be a wave that will hit. We're kind of more in the Midwest where people are generally a little more unhealthy than other
Sure.
parts
Yeah.
of the country. But like I'm pretty into
it's coming.
fitness and health, and
Yeah.
I'm like, I think a lot about the food I eat. Like
Yeah.
everything I when I'm traveling, I'm driving and I'm
Yep.
going through a gas station.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really hard for me to find
Yeah,
food
yeah, I
that's like
know, yeah.
actually good for me to
Yeah.
eat.
Yeah.
And that sucks for me because
Yeah.
I care about stuff like that. And I'm
Yep.
willing to spend five
Oh, yeah.
extra dollars per week on a couple different things. I'm like, yeah, like
Yeah.
my milk, for example, or
Sure.
like we buy a whole cow every year
Yep.
or a quarter cow, whatever we buy. We spend enough money on the like. I
Yeah.
spend a little extra because I know where that came from. I know it's
Yep.
quality meat. I trust the people. Like it's coming.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, we should probably wrap this up because it sounds like we could go all
Yeah. Yeah. No worries. Yeah.
Is there any book or podcast or lecture or anything that you have listened to or read in the past few years that has been pivotal in the way you think about your operation or your business?
It's a good question. I think, well, anything, I read leading into all of this on the agriculture side, I read a lot of Joel Salatin books, pretty much anything I get my hands on. And I think a lot of, again, my mind is, I think we're going to trend back towards that sort of like small scale farming. Like that's what's going to become more and more popular, more sustainable, more transparent, all of that. And so if you're just getting started in agriculture, books like that are super helpful. If you're getting started, if you're looking at it from like a business perspective, I think things like there's a book called like Blue Ocean Strategy. There's another one called gosh, what is it? Oh man, it's up there. I'll have to look. Blue Ocean Strategy is a good example though of like if you look out into the market, it looks as though the market's saturated. Like pasture-raised eggs, for example, is completely saturated. Like you go to the grocery store, there's 10 pasture-raised or free-range egg companies on the grocery store aisle. So how am I going to break into that market, right? Well, finding that little niche, and so I would always encourage, especially farmers, because the difference between me and most people in the sort of regenerative space is that most people in the regenerative space right now are 90% farmer, 10% entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I'm like the opposite. I'm 90% entrepreneur and 10% farmer, right?
Yeah.
Just because that's where my interest lies a little bit more. And so, try to educate yourself on whatever your weak point is, whether that's, you're a row cropper, but you know nothing about business. Well, then start educating yourself on business,
And specifically like Blue Ocean Strategy, that purpose of that book is like, hey, even if it's in a saturated market, there's still a lot of room for innovation there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of room that you can carve out your
That's exactly
vertical there and still make a bunch of money.
Yep,
like,
that's right.
I had this conversation with my business partner the other day, like the clothing space, super saturated, like one of the most trendy, most saturated places.
Yeah.
Like I could name a niche for you right now that doesn't exist that I know of. And I'm like, I'm gonna keep it to myself. If anyone able to do that. I can tell. I'll tell you after. But it's one of those things like that is for sure there. It for sure does exist. And if I had $5 million laying around, we could I think kill it in that space because we know the thing that would stand out.
Yep.
It exists. It's there. Same thing for you. There's eggs all over the country.
Yeah.
There's so many eggs all over the place. There's plenty of people who sell direct to consumer. There's plenty of people who buy eggs from it. But hey, if we own this in this vertical, in this blue ocean, we can do.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah. So, that'd be my recommendation is just know what your weak spots are and And also YouTube is like such a great, like you can literally learn, you get your whole MBA on YouTube if
Oh
you
my
wanted
gosh.
to, so.
Yeah, an Audible subscription and YouTube,
Yeah,
you can do
yeah,
so much.
that's exactly right. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, last question. If you could give a young person who wants to be in this industry and survive a one sentence piece of advice, what would it be? You can think on this.
One sentence. Um, keep your investment very low until you find a fantastic product market fit. That would be it. Yeah.
Love that. All right. Well,
Cool.
that was Patrick Samuels. Thank you for coming
Yeah,
on.
thank
I'll
you.
have all of his links and everything in the episode description. If they are in our region, where can they find your products?
So yeah, right now we sell across Tennessee and Kentucky, and Sprouts, Food Lion, Fresh Market, and yeah, we're in a whole bunch of other small retailers. But yeah, we've got some more coming on board next year, and we'll announce those soon. Yeah.
And if you're interested in working with them on the egg side of things, how can they find you? If they're in this region.
Yep, go to our website, and you can send them in a form through the website, and yeah, we'll be in contact.
Sweet. Awesome.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah.